Welcome to That's Life podcast with Lea and Shaun. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you haven't, please like, subscribe, and share to our platforms at Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for tuning in to our first episode of season 11. We're so excited to come back to you guys. It seemed like it went by super fast this time around.
It really did.
But we're glad to be back with you guys, giving you more content where we can educate, empower, and encourage you. If you are a small business, this is just for you. We are running a promotion right now. It has actually been active all week where you can advertise your business through flyer, through ticker, or through video right now at a discounted rate. That rate actually ends tonight at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you take advantage if you have a product or a business that you want to advertise with us, okay? So tonight, we're going to be talking about, well, of course, medical marijuana. You're going to hear us reference it as cannabis or as marijuana throughout the remainder of the show. I am so excited about having our special guest this evening, expertise. And we're going to talk about the importance and why there's benefits behind medical marijuana. We're going to be talking with Dr. Dawson, and we're going to be also talking with Dr. Weinberg when we come back from our break. So stay tuned and let's talk about medical marijuana. We'll be right back.
Want to advertise your business or product on That's Life podcast? Email us at thatslife0320@gmail.com. We offer several packages just for you, including ticker, flyer, voiceover, videos created by us or by you to air, or all four. We have a few slots available just for you. For packaging and pricing, email us at thatslife0320@gmail.com. Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, and Facebook at That's Life Podcast with Lea and Shaun. Follow us on IG and TikTok at That's Life with Lea and Shaun. 1 out of 8. 1 out of every 8 women are diagnosed with breast cancer. Walking on an unpaved road, a story of life, faith, healing, and redemption. It's my story, a journey when I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017. In June of 2020, I decided to chronicle my journey of breast cancer. My intention was to educate, empower, and encourage women that look just like me. For all those that are in the fight, know that I stand in solidarity with you. You could purchase your copy of Walking on an Unpaved Road on Amazon and stay tuned for the digital release of our book in 2025. Thank you for all your love and support. And for those that are in the fight, know that I stand in solidarity with you.
Welcome back to That's Life podcast with
Lea
and Shaun.
Thank you so much for tuning in tonight as we talk about medical marijuana or cannabis, and are there any benefits behind it? I'm so excited to have our special guests, Dr. Weinberg and Dr. Dawson, as we talk about this topic and kind of get rid of some stigmas. It's time to get rid of stigmas as it relates to medical cannabis and what it symbolizes in our world and our industry.
Absolutely.
Shaun is going to be reading the first stat of the night, and then we're going to kick straight off and ask some questions. So Shaun, take it away.
Yes, I will. From MayoClinic.org, medical marijuana that derives of the cannabis sativa plant that are used to ease symptoms caused by certain medical conditions. Medical marijuana is also known as medical cannabis. Studies report that medical cannabis has possible benefit for several conditions. State laws vary in which condition qualifies people for treatment with medical marijuana. If you're considering marijuana for medical use, check your state's regulations.
Absolutely. We very much know that medical marijuana cannabis is not accepted in a lot of states. We know that to be a fact. As we are in the state of Georgia, we're still in the fight, but there's some things that you can utilize as it relates to cannabis. I mean, obviously it's not the leaf, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that as the show progresses. I'm going to introduce our very special guest. I'm going to start with Dr. Weinberg. Dr. Weinberg, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We're so happy to have your expertise.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Tell the people a little bit about you and what you do and your background.
So I'll be brief, but I actually have always been interested in mind-body interactions. And I did a residency in internal medicine at L.A. County and came back to New York to do a fellowship, which I made for myself in psychoneuroimmunology, looking at mind-body interactions. And this was in the 80s. And I was actually working on a project to treat AIDS patients with acupuncture. Spent 7 months in an immunology lab, went to sign up my first patients. And the study was thwarted because the doctor who was the head of internal medicine at the VA didn't want it to be known as a place to practice voodoo medicine. And see that, I was trying to do interesting, cutting edge stuff, and they weren't going to support me. Anyway, I wound up going to the ER at Bellevue, and I wound up becoming an ER doctor, and I was an ER doctor for 32 years. And then in 2015, when New York State was legalizing medical cannabis, one of my ER colleagues said to me, Kenny, they're going to start next year. We could actually become cannabis doctors. Are you interested? And I said, yes, absolutely. So we started Cannabis Doctors of New York. There were 3 of us. We were among the first docs who were registered with the state to certify patients. And so I've been doing it for 9 years now. I've seen probably 1,500 patients or more. And as we'll discuss, I've had just really gratifying encounters and experiences with my patients and their families. It's really been a pretty fabulous thing. And interestingly, I feel like 40 years later, I've sort of come back to where I started, looking at mind-body interactions, because I think the whole endocannabinoid system, which we can talk about, is very involved in these mind-body kind of interactions. So that's sort of where I'm at, and really enjoying what I do.
Absolutely. I absolutely love the fact that you brought it back home to talk about how people view cannabis. And that's one of the things we are going to talk about, is just the stigma that's behind it, because it's just so much negativity and it doesn't need to be.
Absolutely.
Shaun?
I would like to introduce Dr. Dawson. Thank you and welcome to the show. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Felecia Dawson. I have been in Georgia since 1979, having went to Emory University and Morehouse School of Medicine, then back to Emory for my obstetrics and gynecology training. Over time, I learned that pills and surgery were not the answer to a lot of our health issues, and I became board certified in holistic medicine before the American Board of Physician Specialties even recognized it. Once they did recognize it, they put a specialty up called integrative medicine. So I went ahead and sat for that exam and passed that. So I was actually practicing as a board certified obstetrician gynecologist, as well as a board certified integrative medicine physician or holistic medicine physician, and spent much of my practice entertaining body, mind, and spirit. About 2013, I became a little disillusioned with the business of medicine. Medicine is not what it used to be. It's oftentimes run by people with masters of business. They're not necessarily have the patient's best interests at heart, or the physician. This system of American healthcare is really chewing up and spitting out the patients and the providers. It's about profit over the people. And I was getting a little fed up with those aspects of medicine. Although I love teaching my patients how to be healthier and happier, the business of medicine was really burning me out. And in 2013 is about the same time that Dr. Sanjay Gupta began his weed documentaries. And Dr. Gupta, like most physicians, believed that cannabis was a drug, that it didn't do any good. And he found out by traveling around the world that cannabis has been used for thousands of years by physicians and healthcare providers and lay people, and that it works. And he said, our government has been lying to us. And this is Sanjay Gupta who's telling us this. So at the same time, I was becoming disenchanted with American healthcare. I turned to cannabis and was amazed to learn that it was a healing plant, not the drug that we were taught in medical school. That in this country, in the late 1800s through 1937, 1940, American physicians were prescribing cannabis to their patients for a multitude of reasons. And you could go down to your drugstore and get cannabis. And until the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, Americans were familiar with cannabis. But the first DEA officer, Harry Anslinger, fooled the American people and called it marijuana because that's what he heard the Mexican immigrants who were coming up from the early 1900s. He fooled the American people and American physicians and said, we're going to outlaw this marijuana because it's causing, white women to want to sleep with black men, and it makes black men powerful and makes them want to beat up the cops and all this kind of thing. So, that's how cannabis became illegal. And, those are some of the things that I learned that made me say, what? And I'm just blown away. I mean, I was already dealing with plant medicine anyway, but cannabis is like one of the most complex plants that has the most uses that I've ever seen. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And I closed my practice in 2016 after serving the women of Georgia for 30 years and began advocating for and educating the public as well as my fellow physicians about cannabis as medicine. And that's what I've been doing since that time.
Well, I love both of y'all's background.
Absolutely.
If I'm honest, I'm grateful for your background because both of us have our own situation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that before we dive into questions. Both of us are dealing with debilitating diseases. Shaun, tell the people.
Well, mine is an autoimmune disease, and I've been suffering with rheumatoid arthritis since I was 18 years old. And so I've been on a struggle with that, and I've had multiple doctors only shoot me up with medication, steroids, and left and right, and taking other stuff that affect my bone marrow. And that's when I came across cannabis, and that actually gave me more relief than any medicine that they've ever given me.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And with mine, I've always been transparent. As you saw my commercial, I was diagnosed in 2017 with stage 1 breast cancer. And went into remission in 2018. And then in 2021, I was re-diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. Pain medication has always been subscribed to me. I have taken everything from Tramadol to Percocet to just everything, every kind of medicine that you can imagine. And I recently started taking cannabis because it was the only thing that did not cause harshness to my stomach. And that was very important to me to be able to have a digestive where I could function. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Shaun's going to actually ask the first question to you, Dr. Dawson. So Shaun, take it away.
My first question for you, Dr. Dawson, is discuss the different types of medical marijuana.
And forgive me, but I'm going to be using the word cannabis.
That's perfectly fine with
Perfectly
us.
fine.
The different forms. Well, there's forms that you can inhale through your lungs, be it smoking a joint or a vape pen or an inhaler like you have for asthma. There are tinctures, which you can bring in through your mouth, or they're either oil-based or alcohol-based. Also, alcohol-based under your tongue tinctures. There are topicals, things you can put on your skin. There are transdermals that can push the medicine even further, deeper into your systemic system. And there are suppositories. There are also, well, in terms of oral, there's also troches, things that can dissolve in the inner cheek of your mouth. So those are the different delivery methods, if that's what you mean.
Yes. Thank you.
And I think it's important to reference that, because I think sometimes when people think about cannabis, they think immediately of the inhalation, as opposed to all these other forms that are just as important and critical, including oils. Dr. Weinberg, my question to you is, what is one thing that you've learned about medical cannabis that has fascinated you?
I think that I have never seen, and we talked about this before, I've never seen a plant or any kind of medicine that has benefits across such a wide spectrum of diseases. And as I was learning, when I started out, I would prescribe something for somebody, and then they'd say, oh, well, it would also help with this. And that kept happening. I kept expanding my horizons because people kept telling me, it's helping this, it's helping that, and we realize, or I realize, that it just has so many benefits, whether it's for seizures or pain or MS, autoimmune disease. I'm doing a lot of work with dementia now, and that's been fascinating for me because it's very helpful for dementia and, cognitive issues. So I think that's really what has been the most exciting for me in terms of as I've become involved with this.
Absolutely. I'm going to go again and ask you, Dr. Weinberg, what would be some things that you would teach your patients about pain management and medical cannabis? Because I think sometimes, again, we have the stigma of, like we said, smoking the joint. But what would be some of the things that you would tell your patients as in regards to cannabis and how it can manage pain management?
Well, and I'm sure Dr. Dawson does the same thing. I mean, it's a complicated plant. And I spend a lot of time talking to my patients, telling them about the endocannabinoid system, telling them about THC and CBD. And in New York State, it's all about ratios of those two compounds, two predominant compounds of the plant. You can get something that's a high THC, low CBD, something that's equal amounts, or something that's high CBD and low THC. We also, at some point, could talk about indica and sativa, but basically, I talk about the fact that THC is a very strong pain reliever. It also has some anti-inflammatory properties. CBD is good for pain, but is great for inflammation. I talk about that, and I also mention that in most conditions where people have chronic pain, there's a lot of muscle tightness, and you're holding yourself in ways just to minimize the pain. THC, I find, is very good for that muscle tightness. I have a lot of patients with MS where muscle spasticity is a major component, and I learned that, a lot of them stop taking their MS meds because they're so toxic and they use a high THC product. So I talk about those, sort of giving them that information as a way to approach starting to use cannabis for pain relief.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can tell you, just as using medical cannabis, it has done so much wonder for me, especially for pain management, for my spouse as well too, because Even when I take narcotics, if I'm honest, when I've taken a narcotic, it's always done for me is give me a stomachache and put me to sleep. It has not managed pain. And so that's the part that I think a lot of people miss when they talk about medical cannabis and pain management. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, Shaun.
Dr. Dawson, my next question for you is, do you believe specialty doctors should make medical marijuana or cannabis available to their patients?
I do believe they should make cannabis available to their patients. However, everyone is not knowledgeable and may not even want to handle cannabis at all. You know, they may have their own family history of addiction or, you know, have some baggage bringing to the table and may not want to deal with it at all. So if they're unable to help their patient with it, be knowledgeable about it with their patient, then they should refer them to someone like Dr. Weinberg or myself, who is knowledgeable. And with the advent of telemedicine, it's easy to connect with a knowledgeable physician about cannabis, online. So, either they should know about it themselves. If they are not, then they should have some people they can refer their patients to.
Right. Thank you. I couldn't agree any more than that, because there's a lot of people that are uneducated about it and rather stay away from it than educate themselves more about how it is used and how it can be more beneficial to them than taking the over-counter prescribed medications. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
My next question for you, Dr. Dawson, is what has been the best part of your job?
It's always empowering my patients to know that they can have much control over their health. To see the light bulb come on, to have people come back and say, I tried what you said and it worked. I that's always been the joy of my work, is having the light bulb come on and people understanding how much control they have over their health instead of feeling like a victim. There's lots that people can do to improve their health. And, I am, with my holistic background, I'm not one to just swap out cannabis or CBD for the pharmaceutical. I look at the entire picture. Body, mind, and spirit. Do you like your job? What kind of support you got at home? What kind of childhood trauma you have? I mean, I'm looking at the whole picture. How are you eating? How are you sleeping? I don't believe that you should just swap out cannabis for the pharmaceutical. It's not a panacea. It's not for everyone. It doesn't work all the time. So you got to look at every part of your being and how you're living and traversing this world to improve. And, when your body has symptoms, it's trying to tell you something. And if you ignore those symptoms, those symptoms are going to get louder and louder until you pay attention. And it's just a matter of, listening and finding out what works best for you.
Absolutely. I love that as an answer. Yes. I absolutely do. I think, like you said, is when you get that light bulb and that aha moment and you realize like there's something else that you could be for yourself. You could be a better advocate for yourself. And that's one of the things that we promote definitely with each other and for ourselves is be an advocate for yourself when it relates to your health. You know when something's working and when it's not working. So you might have to go back to the drawing board. Absolutely.
Agreed.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue on the conversation about medical cannabis and continue to have some open dialogue about how it benefits those that have debilitating diseases. I'm so excited about this show. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
First Ladies Automotive Repair is a mobile repair service in the Atlanta area. Our mission is to provide efficient service with a personal touch. Let's take the stress away and get you back in gear. To book your appointment, email us at firstladiesautomotiverepair@gmail.com. To check out our services, go to our Facebook at First Ladies Automotive Repair. You thought the journey was over? It's not over till it's over. In 2017, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was a journey that I went through for 2 years and went into remission. In 2021, I was diagnosed again with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. This journey has challenged me and stretched me beyond places I couldn't believe. Yet Still I Rise is part 2 of the life that I'm living with breast cancer. It is still here to educate, empower, and encourage women who are just like me on the breast cancer journey. Our pre-sales will start in June of 2024, as the book will be due to release next year in 2025. Please support me as you once did in purchasing our second book, Yet Still I Rise. For all those that are going through breast cancer and metastatic breast cancer, know that I'm on your side.
Welcome back to That's Life podcast with Lea and Shaun
and Dr. Weinberg and Dr. Dawson. We're so excited about having their expertise as we talk about medical cannabis. I did want to show this, even though I don't have to show this to the people, that I am thankful for this card. And I'm thankful that my doctor heard my voice when I said that I couldn't take pain medication. And he allowed me to be able to get my medical card for the state of Georgia. Make sure that you get a doctor that actually hears your voice and hears what you're trying to do with your health. It's important that you do that. We're going to go to our next set of questions, but before we do, we're going to give another statistic. So depending on the state, you may qualify for treatment with medical cannabis if you meet certain requirements and have qualifying conditions. Certain conditions can be Alzheimer's, ALS, HIV and AIDS, Crohn's disease, epilepsies and seizures, glaucoma, multiple sclerosis and muscle spasms, severe and chronic pain, and severe nausea or vomiting caused by cancer treatments. For me, that looks like when I come out of treatment, a lot of times, let me start by saying this too. I haven't had to go through chemotherapy. And for all women that have gone through chemotherapy, my heart is with you. I witnessed chemotherapy and what it does to the body. It breaks the body down in a way that is just, it's tough. It's tough to be able to see that in live time. But I did have to do radiation. I do monthly injections every single month to suppress my estrogen levels. And sometimes when I come out of the doctor's office, it's like as if a mad truck has hit me. It's rough. And so I'm thankful for the fact that, again, I have a doctor who supports me in this journey of getting medical cannabis to be able to kind of monitor it. Now, obviously, I don't have the leaf. I have the oil, but still it's better than what it was before when I was taking narcotics. I'll take a win where I can take a win.
Absolutely.
Shaun is going to ask the first question of the night to you, Dr. Dawson. So Shaun.
All right, Dr. Dawson, why does cannabis have a negative stigma attached to it?
Well, I have to say that, cannabis has been used by humans for thousands of years. It has oftentimes been associated with the poor, soldiers, people of color throughout time. And that's part of the stigma. But the stigma in America is mainly due to the actions of Harry Anslinger, who I was telling you all about a little earlier. He targeted the Mexican immigrants as well as Black people and criminalized them because they were using that plant. And because of his efforts in the 1930s, that's the major reason why it's stigmatized to this day. In 1969, the Marijuana Tax Act was overturned and found to be unconstitutional. And then President Nixon, who was, come to learn, a racist and a traitor and crook, put it back under prohibition in 1970 in the controlled substances list. And that's why there's so much stigma, because he used it to get back at the Vietnam protesters. He used it to get back at Black people who are being emboldened with the civil rights movement to suppress both of those groups. But historically, since that time, since 1970, cannabis has been used to fuel the prison industrial complex and fill it with Black and brown bodies and the poor. because it's easy pickings. So that's why there's so much stigma associated with it.
And isn't it interesting that the one thing that can help people is the one thing that's being weaponized? Isn't it very interesting? It never ceases to amaze me. Dr. Weinberg, my question to you is, what are some benefits that you have seen with your patients as it relates to cannabis, the ones that have debilitating diseases?
Can I just add something to what Dr. Dawson was saying?
Of course, absolutely.
Yes.
Two things that I think are really important. And Dr. Dawson, you may know better than I. The last time I looked, I think maybe 10% of medical schools in this country teach about cannabis and the endocannabinoid system. And that's one of the reasons why so many of our colleagues don't know anything about it. They've never really learned about it. So I think that's a major issue that needs to be addressed. And the other thing is that, again, to what Dr. Dawson was talking about, I think both of us came through the ranks around the same time, and medicine was always very paternalistic. And, we were used to telling patients, you have to do this is what you do. But with cannabis, you can take charge. And you were alluding to that, Dr. Dawson, that patients really are able to figure out, okay, this combination works now. If this is going to happen, then this helps me. A lot of times they know it much better than we can. And I think we sort of give them the information and then they can take over, but they really are in charge of their health, which I think is great. I really like the fact that it allows that to happen. But, and I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, I absolutely love that you did that, because I think that there needs to be a conversation about the benefits behind cannabis, especially for medical students, especially for those that are going into the medical sector. They need to be able to know the benefits as opposed to, absolutely, instead of just knowing maybe the other side of it, which is the Western medicines. So my question was,
yes, go ahead, Dr. Dawson.
You were asking me, Dr. Weinberg, about that survey. I think the latest survey was in 2013, and only 13% of medical schools mentioned the endocannabinoid system. But the issue is that most physicians, most medical students, most residents want to know about cannabis. Now the question is, why is it not being put into the medical schools? And I'm going to say it has a lot to do with the pharmaceutical industry, because cannabis can, on average, replace about 5 medications at a time, on average. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
No,
before I get your target on my back.
No. I mean, look, Big Pharma, is responsible for so much of the problems that we have in this country in terms of medical care. And they clearly are threatened by cannabis because, you can technically grow something in your garden that could help you with all these things and not be spending hundreds or more dollars a month on these pharmaceuticals that they're making horrendous profits on. So, yeah.
And it's no different than what we always talk about. We always talk about the FDA. And I always tell people all the time that there's a reason why the Food and Drug Administration are together. There is a reason for that. The easiest way to kill people is through food. I always say that. It's the easiest way to get you dependent upon a medication. If I give you this particular food that has lots of sodium, you have to come to me to get the amlodipine to get your blood pressure to go down. Like the two things have to work together.
Yeah.
And it's
the processed food. And then if you do organic, they got to make the prices even higher.
Yeah.
So you can't even really afford it for the lower classmen. It's a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that we're having this conversation. So my question for you, Dr. Weinberg, is what are some benefits that you have physically seen in your patients that have had debilitating diseases and have used cannabis?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could choose so many of them. I alluded to the work we're doing now with dementia, which has been really gratifying. I mean, because I go into these senior living facilities and patients are on just a boatload of meds to control their behavior, but they don't really allow the patients to be interactive at all. They're just trying to keep them down. And I've learned also that anxiety is a major driver for a lot of these patients, aggressive and at times assaultive behavior. And as we know, CBD is great for anxiety. So we're giving them products that have high ratio CBD, THC, and they're more interactive. As I said before, because THC is very good for that muscle tightness, the caregivers are able to move them more, the patients are more interactive, the families are happy. So that's been a major, really gratifying thing that I've been doing. We talked before about autoimmune disease, it can be so helpful there. The vast majority of the patients I see have chronic pain. But what I've noticed, and I'm sure Dr. Dawson has as well, I'll have patients who are ready to go under the knife typically for back pain. And they start using cannabis. They have less pain. They start to exercise. They lose weight. They have less pain. Just like this very positive cycle that occurs with them. I have several patients who, it's been 5 or 6 years, they've never wound up having to have surgery. They're using their cannabis product every day. They're very happy. No narcotics. So those kinds of things are, very gratifying.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you bring it home by saying that they just make the decision to try something before going under the knife, and it changes their whole world, their whole everything. And it just doesn't impact. What people don't realize is debilitating diseases don't just impact self. It impacts those that orbit around the patient. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Shaun?
Yeah. All right, Dr. Dawson, what made you become an advocate for cannabis in the medical sector?
Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier when Dr. Sanjay Gupta started doing his weed documentaries. That's what made me, thankfully, save me, was cannabis as medicine. After I became so disillusioned with the business of medicine. So that would be the answer or why I did it.
Yeah, understandably so. And had a full brain fart, I'm sorry. My next question for you, Dr. Dawson, is what are the differences between medical cannabis and recreational cannabis?
Very good question.
Well, a lot of providers have come to the conclusion that all use is medical. Cannabis has been used in ritual. It has been used just for fun. It has been used for medicine, fiber, food. But I believe that if you're using it frequently, then it's probably medicinal. You may not realize it, but it's probably medicinal. I mean, if you're using it just every once in a while, when you go to a party, that might be recreational. But most uses of cannabis is medicinal. And in terms of medicinal cannabis versus recreational, when people are just trying to do it for recreation, they're oftentimes shooting for the highest THC content versus a medicinal cannabis. They're looking for variety of cannabinoid ratios between THC and CBD, looking for certain terpenes. And there's usually a wider variety of products in the medicinal cannabis market versus the recreational tends to be skewed towards high THC potency. And that's, you lose out a lot when you're just focusing on that. You can get intoxicated on much lower levels of THC, with a good variety of a wide spectrum, full spectrum plant than just THC. So that was the main differences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually going to piggyback off that question, Dr. Weinberg, and ask a question that we didn't have, but you referenced it. Talk about the differences, like when it relates to indica and sativa, and what THC is, like just a very broad explanation of what THC is, because I think a lot of people, when they think of all those things, they immediately go to Delta 8 or they go to something negative. So talk about the differences in what sativa and indica is versus THC and all those things as it relates to the compound part of it.
mean, I'll go back, and there was a time when indica and sativa were very distinct plants. They grew in different parts of the world. If you looked at them, they looked very different. One was very tall, the other was squat and bushy. There's been so much hybridization that and I'm curious what Dr. Dawson thinks about this, but when you talk about, indica and sativa, you're really talking about, I think, terpenes that are put back in, or they're the part of the product, which then, because THC, I mean, if you think about it, THC is just one compound that, why would it make you speedy in one situation or lethargic and sleepy in another? It's really the terpenes that are making the difference. And that's a major part of it. I mean, the terpenes are what give the plant the smell, but they also give it so many of those other qualities. So I think that's really the difference between indica and sativa. And then indica will, indicouch, as they say. It will, a lot of patients like to use it for sleep, and sativa is more focused and a little more energetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can agree with what he just said. There is no such thing as a pure indica or pure sativa these days. Everything's a hybrid. Mm-hmm. But we found out in the last 2 or 3 years that this indica effect and sativa effect really comes down to about 5 terpenes. I want to say humulene is one of them, but I can't remember all of them. But the indica versus sativa effect comes down to just 5 terpenes.
Absolutely. Look, we don't know a lot about that part other than the sativa and the indica part. And I absolutely love what you said, Dr. Weinberg, because I am team indica all day. I like to be relaxed and on the couch. And this one, because of the industry she's in,
mine is definitely sativa.
More sativa based. Mm-hmm. But hybrid has definitely been the middle ground, I definitely would say.
Can I tell you something? I don't have a battery charger, and I'm low. I may disappear. I hope it's not going to happen.
And if it does, it's quite all right. We would hate that, but we're just so grateful for you and your expertise that you've dropped already on here. It's been just a joy. Yes. And so don't worry if it does happen, we'll we adapt. That's one of the reasons why we call the show That's Life. Okay. No, it's quite all right. We're actually going to go to our halftime show anyway. So this is our halftime show where you can learn something in 1 minute, whether it's a minute with the savings queen, a minute with the mechanic, a minute with the mini chef. But tonight we're going to do something funny, and we're going to show you the minute with the Flavor King. We're so excited about our brand new minute with the Flavor King.
Welcome to a minute with the Flavor King. Today we're going to be talking about Scoville units. Scoville units, named after Wilbur Scoville, is the unit of measure of spiciness in peppers and hot sauce and anything. So on that scale, it's a chemical compound called capsaicin. Capsaicin is literally just the chemical in peppers that make it spicy. On the lowest part of the Scoville unit is the bell pepper, which is 0 Scoville units. So we're gonna bite into it. It's not spicy. It's a low heat. It's no heat whatsoever. The next on that list, which is a poblano pepper, is between the bell pepper and the jalapeno. It's a little more than a bell pepper. It's not a lot though. The next on that list is a jalapeno. Jalapeno is between poblano and Scotch bonnet. The seeds make it spicier, so it's a natural chemical. And now for the last one, Scotch bonnet. This one, don't try it at home, guys, because this. Oh, help me, guys! And now you have it. That's a minute with the Flavor King. Can I have some more ice now, Mom?
Want to advertise your business or product on That's Life podcast? Email us at thatslife0320@gmail.com. We offer several packages just for you, including ticker, flyer, voiceover, videos created by us or by you to air, or all four. We have a few slots available just for you. For packaging and pricing, email us at thatslife0320@gmail.com.
Welcome back to That's Life podcast with
Lea
and Shaun
and Dr. Weinberg and Dr. Dawson. I hope you enjoyed that little skit of our son. He's a funny guy, that one. But you got to learn something about peppers if you didn't know anything about peppers. And capsaicin is actually one of the chemical compounds that is found in some of the topicals as it relates to medical cannabis. So you can actually find capsaicin in a lot of topical creams too. So it is got some benefits there too. We're going to ask a few more questions and hopefully we don't lose Dr. Weinberg, but we'll see. So Shaun.
All right, my question for you, Dr. Dawson, is do you believe that you can be spiritual and use cannabis? Why or why not?
Yes, I believe you can be spiritual and use cannabis. Cannabis was actually mentioned in the Bible a few times, I think about 5 times, as cannabism in the original Hebrew. And when it got translated to Greek, some of the translation got lost, but cannabis was mentioned at least 5 times in the Bible. And some people will say, well, I don't know if it was really cannabis. There's no evidence that it really existed, but it was used in the anointing oil. It's thought that Jesus and his disciples use it in the anointing oil as part of the recipe of the anointing oil. And there's a tomb, a 2,700-year-old, a temple that was dating back to 2700 BC, south of Tel Aviv, Israel. And there were 2 altars in this temple. On one of the temples, there was burned frankincense. On the other altar, there was burned cannabis. And they just found that out in the last couple of years. And so that shows you that the Hebrew people use cannabis in some of their ceremonies. On the other side, cannabis tends to make things slow down. People under the influence of cannabis tend to drive slower. It helps you to be in the moment. And that is probably one of the most spiritual things you can do, is to be present and in the moment. And that cannabis can help you do that. Some people feel like they enjoy their walk in nature better with cannabis on board. Other people like to work out with cannabis because it, again, helps you to focus and be more present. So definitely cannabis can be used even if you're trying to be spiritual. They go hand in hand.
Wonderful.
Well, I thank you for saying that, because one of the things that we experienced when we came out of, I guess you could say, the closet of smoking was that we had a lot of people who, because both of our foundations are very spiritual. We have a very strong spiritual family. Both of us separate apart from each other. And you will not believe some of the stigmas that we heard from it. How can you love God and use cannabis, and just all the things that come with it? And not necessarily in that way as verbatim in that way, but just still the kind of the innuendo of how can you love God and do this thing. And so I'm glad that you absolutely, referenced the Bible, specifically the Bible, because I think a lot of people don't really realize that it's a plant. It's still a plant. I think that's what everybody kind of gets stirred up about. It's a plant. It's derived from a leaf.
Yes.
So absolutely. I am going to ask my last question to you, Dr. Weinberg, and then we're going to move to our tips of the night. And actually, we're going to ask the question to both of you. So I'm going to ask it first to you, Dr. Weinberg. What would you say to someone who is worried about side effects of medical marijuana? Or if you even want to discuss what some of the side effects are as it relates to medical marijuana.
Can I just say one thing about what Dr. Dawson said also?
Of course.
I have a rabbi that I know believes that the burning bush was cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a Hasidic Jewish patient with Crohn's disease, and who was using a high THC product. And after a few months, he said to me, Dr. Weinberg, does THC give you wisdom? And I said, well, I've been reading the Talmud all of my life, and there are all of these passages that never made sense to me. When I use cannabis, I get it. And I love what you were saying, Dr. Dawson. So I think, it's a huge area that it's worth a long discussion. But anyway, I think, the fact that there's a medical program and someone comes to Dr. Dawson or me, we know about interactions, we know about side effects. We're talking to our patients before they get started. And, one of the things that you learn early on is start low and go slow. People can have somebody can take the slightest amount and get a very strong reaction. So you're always starting at the lowest doses. And that way you can really go up as needed. I also always tell my patients to take notes as they're getting started, because I know in New York, it's a medical program. If a dispensary is giving you something that's 5 milligrams THC, 5 of CBD, it's going to be consistent. Every time you take it, you're pretty much going to get the same response. And so if you keep a diary, a journal, and when I take this, that, or the other thing, or this is happening, and I take that, then you have it available for you. So, but there could be side effects. But again, when you're talking with medical professionals who are experienced about it, I think that obviates a lot of the problem. And the other thing about New York State, New York is one of maybe 3 states in the country that requires you to see a pharmacist. So before anybody can purchase products in New York, they go to a dispensary, and I work with a number of pharmacists, very, very well trained. They know about the interactions as well. And I think I really applaud that about the New York State program. And it gives my patients a lot of even more confidence before they get started.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, start low and start slow. But, even when you think about over-the-counter medication or even prescribed medication, it's the same thing, right? If you take hydrocodone, some people may not take the whole thing. They might pop it in half, take half, see how they feel. And in a few hours, they take the second dose. So it's really the same concept as it relates to cannabis. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Dr. Dawson, I'm going to shoot the same question to you. What would you say to someone who is worried about using cannabis?
I agree with the comments that have already been made. Start low, go slow. Keep track of what you're using and what effects it has on you. Also, in terms of side effects, like sedation, some people can become anxious depending on the doses. Like cannabis or THC has like a biphasic effect. It's like at a low dose you get this effect, like it can treat anxiety, nausea, vomiting at a low dose, but a high dose can actually cause anxiety, nausea, and vomiting. That's why we say start slow and go slow. So those are some of the things that can be caused with a high dose. Paranoia, also lightheadedness, because cannabis can make the smooth muscle around your blood vessels relax, and that makes your blood pressure drop, and then that makes your heart beat faster, because your body's all about keeping you in balance and homeostasis. And if something makes your blood pressure drop, your body's going to do what it needs to do to get that blood pressure back up, and raising your heart rate, make sure that your organs are getting the blood that it needs. So those are some of the side effects that can happen with cannabis, but that's why it's important to start low and go slow.
Yeah,
absolutely. Love this. We're gonna do our tips of the night. And we always have to give you guys valuable tips that are going to be beneficial to you. So this is 4 ways to ask your doctor if medical cannabis is right for you. So number 1,
be prepared.
So here's the thing. Your doctor might not be familiar with the medical or the medicinal properties of cannabis. So you should go doing your homework, knowing what you need to ask before you get there. Research all the different options that might be available, whether it be oil, whether it be edibles, topicals, capsules. Make sure that you do your homework and be an advocate for yourself. That's one of the biggest things that you can do for yourself. Number 2,
be transparent.
Your conversation is confidential between your doctor and you. Let your doctor know what you want to use, why you want to use it, and what you feel like your outcome should be. If you've already experimented with medical cannabis, let them know. Be clear about that. I'm going to shoot this question to you, Dr. Weinberg. Why is it important for people to not lie to their doctor about using medical cannabis if they're going to use it?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, the first thing that comes to mind is the possible interactions that could go on. One of the problems with doctors not being educated about the effects of cannabis is people could come in and have issues, and if the doctor doesn't know about it, they'll be clueless. I remember working in the ER, and I know that we had more than one patient who came in who had cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, but we didn't know it. This was like 20 years ago. And this guy kept vomiting. He'd come into the middle of the ER vomiting, and we thought he was full of crap. We couldn't, but that's what it was. And so you really need to tell people what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I know you're not done with your checklist, but maybe I'll let you finish your checklist, and then I'm gonna have to push back a little bit.
Okay, you can listen. This is an open forum, so you can definitely push back.
Please go ahead. We want to be correct with what.
I think before you go through that checklist, you need to know better how your physician views cannabis, because if your physician has a lot of stigma associated with cannabis or is a prohibitionist, they might write in your chart has cannabis use disorder, and that's going to follow you for the rest of your life. With the availability of electronic records, every doctor everywhere is going to think you have cannabis use disorder merely because you're using it medicinally every day. And so I think it's better to try to get a feel for how your physician views cannabis before you be transparent. Now, if you're about to undergo surgery, you might have to share because you don't want to have a problem while you're asleep and can't speak for yourself. But in general, it's better to find physicians who share your values, who see cannabis as medicine. And it is especially important for women who are pregnant. That's one of the things I'm dealing with right now as an obstetrician gynecologist. One of my second act things that I want to get involved in is inspiring new research on cannabis and pregnancy, because what we have is not very meaningful for multiple reasons, but I will talk more about that in the future. In addition, women are having their children taken away from them because they're using cannabis, or they're being put in jail. You need to know how your physician feels about cannabis before you are transparent, because we don't live in a perfect world. So before you go through that checklist, know how your doctor feels about it, because you may not be able to handle the repercussions if he or she is negative about it.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to say that I completely agree with you on that. And I'm going to tell you why. Before we even started our show, we were waiting for Dr. Dawson to come into the platform. And Shaun and I were talking with Dr. Weinberg about that exact very thing.
Yeah.
My oncologist prior to the one that I have was completely against cannabis of all kinds, whether it be oil, topical, anything. She was against anything that had the chemical compound of THC or CBD, either one. And I remember telling my wife that I don't know that this is going to work, because I need to do something that's going to make me feel good. And you're constantly, I promise you, I cannot lie to you. Once a month, she was calling in orders for narcotics. Once a month. And I was with this particular doctor for 2.5 years. Okay. Every type of narcotic that you can think and imagine, she was prescribing it to me. And that was one of the reasons why I made the decision to move from this oncologist to where I am now, for that exact reason, because I needed somebody to be able to hear what I was saying. So it is important that when you choose your doctor, if your doctor does not have the same values as you, it's not where you need to be. And we're actually going to talk about that tip. That's actually one of the tips that we're going to talk about, because it is important to make sure that you have a doctor that sees you, not just you as a patient, not you as a number, but sees you. So we're going to talk about that definitely for sure. Our third point:
be inquisitive.
Even if your doctor is well versed in medical benefits of cannabis, he or she is not, shouldn't be the only one that's talking. Ask questions. Make sure that you ask important questions as it relates to medical cannabis. And that's what Dr. Dawson was basically talking about and insinuating as well. And then the last and final tip:
be ready to walk away.
Listen, after all your research and candid conversation, if your doctor is still apprehensive about prescribing medical cannabis, it might be time to take, as they say, your services somewhere else. It might be time to look into another doctor. It might be time to do that. And I'm going to throw this question to you, Dr. Dawson. Talk about why it is that people should not feel intimidated about changing doctors, particularly when they're dealing with debilitating diseases.
Why they should not feel, well, I mean, a doctor's like any other professional. I mean, except it is your life and death, but you still want to find someone that respects you, that shares your values, who can help you accomplish your goals. And I don't want to, beat up on other doctors, because it is difficult to be on top of this unless you really have a desire and the initiative to go into it. Because, the average doctor is very busy, but they may see a headline or read a abstract or a conclusion of a study and leave it at that and not look in deeper to the study. Like, for example, recently there was looking at a cannabis and pregnancy research article that Nora Volkov is who's the head of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. She's like probably one of the most open-minded directors of that agency ever. And she was part of a piece of research that had people asking people about using cannabis in pregnancy. And if the person said, yes, I use cannabis, the next question was, did your doctor recommend it? And no doctor's going to recommend cannabis in pregnancy right now, given what the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the American Board of Pediatrics is saying. So if you said, no, my doctor did not recommend it, they put you down as a recreational user. And so the conclusion of that study, based on that kind of questioning, said that 70% of women are using cannabis in pregnancy recreationally.
Wow.
And the average physician is going to look at that and say, see, pregnant women are just trying to get high while they're pregnant, and that's totally not true. But busy doctors don't have time to look into the study and see how it was done. They're just going to look at the conclusion. So that's part of the problem with, why we're having such a hard time, I think, getting more physicians on board,
Absolutely. Yeah. Man, when I tell you we could talk for hours about this show, thank you both for your expertise and just giving a different light to medical cannabis. It's so important that we talk about the medical side of it and not focus so much on the recreational side of it. Dr. Weinberg, if people have questions for you or if they want to follow you, where can they go on social media, or if there's any information that you would like for our viewers to know?
They can look at Cannabis Doctors of New York, and they'll find me. I also have a blog on Psychology Today. It's called Bedside Manners. So if you go there, and I've just written 2 articles. One of them, I think, it's called Reefer Madness. 2,000 views on that one. I'm sure because of that title. And then I just did one on cannabis and cognitive issues. So they can look there. They'll find me. Kenneth R. Weinberg, MD.
Perfect. Absolutely. And Dr. Dawson, if everybody wants to find you or locate you, where can they find you on social media?
at drfelecia.com, and you spell out the word doctor. Someone already took DR period. So doctor spelled out DOCTOR, Felecia, FELECIA.com. Also, you can find me at plantsforlife.com. I co-founded that educational platform with two other individuals, Marilyn Pierce, RN, and Oski Chevanier, Jamaican herbalist. And we actually have a book coming out this summer called Why We Die and How to Live. And we're looking at the top 10 causes of death in America and how you can handle them holistically, including botanicals and cannabis. So we're excited about that.
Love it. Amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight as we talk about medical cannabis. I'm so glad we did this show tonight. Make sure you follow these individuals on their social media platforms and all things that they're doing. And as you know, we always close with a quote and a Bible verse. Make sure you tune in next Saturday as we talk about setting up for retirement. It's important that you set up for retirement, people, because you know you're not getting any younger at this point. Make sure you tune in 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we discuss setting up for retirement. Shaun's going to close out with our quote.
All right, the quote today is by Bob Marley. Herb is the healing of nation. Alcohol is the destruction.
Absolutely. So when y'all start talking about cannabis, think about that shot of tequila you probably had. It probably wasn't any better than that at this point. Bible verse of the night is Jeremiah 17:14, the NIV version. Help me, O Lord, and I will be healed. Save me, and I will be saved. For you are the one I praise. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight as we talk about medical cannabis. We'll see you next Saturday at the same time. Talk to you soon.
Bye.